Amateur Girl and Fanboy present the Big Bad Glass Movie Review.
Hello, everyone. Welcome back to our little channel on the Big Bad Glass Review. I'm Fanboy from Chiang Mai, Thailand, and this is my amateur girl somewhere near Hollywood. So today we're going to be talking about two movies because there is a slight connection between the two of them. One is Air, which is a fairly large budget film, and then about a third of the cost of Air was the Jesus Revolution. Now, I enjoyed them both very much. Did I like Air more than maybe because of the movie stars? You know, I always like Ben Affleck and Matt Damon. Thank you. It's good to see them back together again. Ben Affleck directed the movie Air. We'll talk about Air, though. They're both all about branding and selling an image. So the first one, Air, of course, is about Air Jordans, about how Michael Jordan got involved with Nike. The movie it's on Prime. Fantastic movie, easy to watch. Almost everybody has Prime, it seems. Check it out. Great film. It recreates the 80s pretty well, I thought, since I grew up during the 80s. And of course, with the music, you know, that helps. The clothes, the music. Interesting, it was an $88 million project, but they really don't change locations all that much. There's like, how many sets are there? Maybe 3. You got the office, you got Michael Jordan's house, and I think there was a couple of scenes on the basketball court. Where's that money go to? I assume to the stars. So I thought it was an excellent film. I was very entertained. I watched it pretty much straight through. Now, the other movie, The Jesus Revolution, completely different type of film, but same thing. Back to the early 70s, the music, which they didn't really, because they didn't have the money. That's probably where a lot of the money in Air went to, was the music for the royalties and stuff. They didn't do that with Jesus Revolution because they didn't have the money, so they had to fake it. One of the directors, Brett McCorkle, was a Nashville guy, and so he actually was they hired as one of the directors, and he's also very involved in the music world. So they had him. He produced most of the music for the movie, so it gave it that 70s sound, right? Yeah. So it's kind of like I do with my little videos. I try to fake the sound that kind of fits the thing. So that's what they did, because they just didn't have the cash to be paying out those royalties. I'm sure in Air, with that big budget, that's a lot of that money went to royalties for the music, right? Kelsey Grammer plays Chuck Smith, and he was the guy who started Calvary Church from very humble beginnings. But the hippie that came in, and I think they should be put more hippie spirit back in the churches nowadays, because you know, like they said, it was the biggest Christian American revival in history. I remember going and seeing a Led Zeppelin concert back in 71 in Florida, and everybody was doing this stuff. This means one way. It means that's a Jesus freak sign. So I knew a lot of Jesus freaks in college, constantly being harassed by them. Because but some of them were actually my friends. But I go to their little meeting houses and things. So it was very, very prevalent in many states in America. So, but it didn't actually, they kind of make it sound like it started there in California, but it was more of like it just generally across the country it was happening. Mm-hmm. So this is just one little part of the story where Chuck Smith got his Calvary Church going, which is a very big church now. It's like a chain, right? Like McDonald's. Mm-hmm. But it started out in the very humble beginnings. Lonnie Frisbee is his name. Very famous. And again, this is a guy who was used by the Calvary. And then basically Lonnie Frisbee, fascinating character, bisexual, struggled with his sexuality. They mention it very small amount in the movie. He says we were in San Francisco, we're doing everything and everyone. A little reference, but that's it. Because again, this is made by evangelists, and they didn't want to go into those dark areas and investigate that, right? And another reason and then Lonnie, of course, he was more of a what they call charismatics or Pentecostal, and that means they're the holy rollers. They're like, oh Lord, they really heavy into it. They want to go by what the Spirit calls them at that moment. Whereas Chuck Smith is more structured. He wants a structured church. He doesn't want to go crazy. He somehow he kept the hippies in line with his personality. And then Greg Laurie came in, as probably through Lonnie Frisbee, but then of course, realigned with Chuck Smith. So anyway, it's a long, interesting history. And Lonnie Frisbee was cast aside eventually due to his, whatever. Maybe it's just because he liked to do the spirit of the moment. He was more Pentecostal, and he ended up going to a more Pentecostal type church called the Vineyard, and being more like that. But I watched a sermon by him after I watched this movie. I watched a sermon by him on YouTube, Lonnie Frisbee sermon. He looked a little high when he was giving the sermon. I hate to say it. It was in the 90s, and he ended up dying of AIDS. So, but I really enjoyed the actor who played him, Jonathan Roumie, who was a little bit more mature looking or acting than the actual Lonnie Frisbee was. And he played Jesus, because the reason he looks like Jesus, because he played Jesus in another very popular show on Netflix called The Chosen, which is about Jesus. I started watching it. It was pretty good. It's kind of they use the Bible heavily, but it's kind of a modernistic type interpretation of it. So I thought I've been watching a little bits and pieces, so I might get into it. So I liked him, and of course Kelsey Grammer is a legend, right? This guy's won awards for everything, and then I literally like the guy who played Greg Laurie, Joel Courtney, who was in Steven Spielberg's Super 8. That's how he got discovered. Basically, he came to work on some commercials, and somebody liked his look and sent him over to see Spielberg. He just came to town for a short time. Yeah, I liked him too. So, but Greg Laurie and Chuck Smith are still alive, and they're still running their churches. So, still very famous, and their churches are huge. Now, the one thing they did when Lonnie did die, where the Crystal Cathedral is there, right in Orange County, very famous, Protestant cathedral in Orange County. They did put a statue of Lonnie Frisbee there. So I wish they had made a point of that in the movie.
No.
They just basically, when he left, they just pushed him aside and never referred back to him. They emphasized Greg Laurie and Chuck Smith at the very end. They never said much about Lonnie Frisbee at all. Again, a very Southern movie, even though it takes a lot place takes in California. Most of it was shot in Alabama. They had a couple scenes that were, I guess they had a California unit who came out and did some things with it, but it was a $15 million production. That's why we would shoot it in Alabama, and they probably just did exteriors, like shoot the beach. Again, I really would like to see the full story of Lonnie Frisbee. There's a great documentary I saw when I used to live in San Francisco on Lonnie Frisbee that was done by, I think, San Francisco PBS did it, and I said, wow, I saw this way back in like 2005 or something. I don't know how old it is. And I said, man, this would make a great movie. This guy is so interesting, right? This Lonnie Frisbee character. So they finally did it, but of course, they did it from the heavy, kind of like conservative evangelical standpoint, right? And Lonnie was much more radical than that. He was like Jesus. He was very radical. It was all about the moment, all about living, at the time and filled in the Spirit and helping people out, and that kind of thing, right? And he seemed, people say they felt God in the room when he was there,
Wow.
and he said they saw miracles happen, that he cured people. So, and he might have been tripping when he was doing it. They said when he did it, they said psychedelics or something. But
wow,
I'm not, as I say, to end my little talk on the Jesus Revolution, they need more hippie spirit back in the churches, And I have been to some churches that have a lot of spirit in them. But I don't know. That was back in those days. It was different. There's no doubt. Now, Amateur Girl, what did you think?